All right. We have a speaker coming up. His name is Dr. Professor Ken Nunn at UF Law Center. But before I bring him on, because I'm thinking of it right now, and I want to forget, I want to thank Ms. Carol Velasquez Richardson, the event coordinator. She was responsible for organizing the speakers and all of that you see right here. And she's my wife, so I want to recognize her. Raise your hand, baby. So here's, I bring to you Dr. Ken Nunn.
All right, good afternoon, Gainesville. How's everybody doing this wonderful, beautiful day that we have here? All right, why are we here, folks? What do we want? All right, what we want is we want justice. So we're going to say, I'm going to say, what do we want? I want you to say justice, okay? What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Justice! What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! All right, we're going to occupy the courts today. We're going to occupy the courts today to get us some of this justice. Yeah. Because we know that justice and freedom is what this country of ours is all about. And we're here today for democracy. And for some of you who don't know me, my name's Kenneth Nunn. And I teach here at the law school at the University of Florida. And so what I try to teach is I try to teach about justice, I try to teach about law, and I try to teach about the importance of upholding our Constitution. And what I tell people, I tell my students when I see them, is I tell them, I ask them on the very first day of class, and if some of you are my students out there in the audience, you can vouch for me on this. I ask them, what is law? And the correct answer, after we've gone around the room several times, is one that they sometimes have difficulty in reaching. But the correct answer is law is what you want it to be. And that's why we're out here today, is because we are moving collectively to create the kind of law and the kind of society that we want. We want to create the kind of society that responds to us. And we've got two choices. We can have the best democracy money can buy, or we can have a democracy that's for the people and by the people. Now I appreciate my brothers and sisters from Occupy Gainesville. I appreciated your skit, because you basically have educated all of us about all of the stuff that has happened in history that brings us to where we are today. Now I'm also very proud of you, because what you've done is you've taken that step of saying, I'm going to step out there and I'm going to get out on the street corners with signs and I'm going to protest. And I know that people are going to look at me like, well, what are you doing? And, you know, you guys, you know, you're just breaking rules and stuff. But, you know, every single change that we have in this country that's been for the better has always started with 2, 3 people who decided they were going to go against what everybody else was doing. So I'm very proud and very happy to see that there are people who are doing that now. That gives me confidence that 2012 is not going to be, as some people think, following this Maya calendar, the end of our world, but it's going to be the beginning of a new world. Our friends from Occupy Gainesville told us all of this started with the 14th Amendment. But really it started with the Civil War. And the Civil War, for those of you who don't recall, you know, some of y'all call that the war between the states. Okay, that was a war to end slavery. Because there was some people, someplace, somewhere in the world who thought that the rights of a human being were less than the rights of people who wanted to make money. And that people who wanted to exploit labor had the right to do so, even if it meant with chains and knives and whips. But what happened is some people who were like Occupy Gainesville, who called themselves abolitionists, said no. And they stood up and they began to organize, they began to struggle. And then we had a civil war, and at the end of that civil war, we had the 14th Amendment that said that all people had to be treated equally. But you know, you're never over, it's never through. There's always a struggle back and forth between the forces of good and the forces of, dare we say, evil? Or can we just say money? Okay, but there's always a struggle back and forth. Y'all hear me? Hello? Okay, maybe it's time for me to sit down. Okay. All right. I won't be long. Okay? But basically what happened, folks, is that they decided that they wanted to make corporations people. And then people said, well, you know, we still want to have our rights. We still want to fight. We still want to be able to organize collectively. We want to have unions. We want to do all these good things, push back. And then the Supreme Court came again with a decision in 1905. It was called Lochner v. New York. And in that decision, they said, well, you know, we think that the freedom of these individual corporations that we have who are people to have contracts is more important than your ability to organize against them. So you can't have labor laws. You can't have restrictions on the hours that people work and all of that. And that went on for about 40 years. And then through organizing and through changing law, through doing things like we're doing now, the rules were changed so that we could organize collectively and we could change things. And so basically what we're dealing with now is whether or not we're going to allow the corporations who get money from us for the things that we buy because we need them. We need gasoline, so we go and buy gasoline. But that doesn't mean we want to support the political purposes of ExxonMobil. Okay, well, what are the politics of ExxonMobil? What does ExxonMobil care about? What's the good world in terms of ExxonMobil is concerned? What do they care about? All they care about is money. And so that's the only thing that they're going to drive their politics is money. It's not going to be education. It's not going to be the good life. It's not going to be what's just. It's not going to be a sense of what's best for us and what's the best society to have. It's only going to be money. And so they have a right, according to the Supreme Court, to go and do that. And this is what the Supreme Court said in Citizens United. They said the government may not suppress political speech on the basis of the speaker's corporate identity. No sufficient governmental interest justifies limits on the speech of nonprofit or for-profit communities. Now, do you like that? Does that sound like what we think law ought to be? Do you think we might be able to change that? All right, let me give you just one other quote here that's from a case that was decided in December of 2011, just last month. And it was decided in the state of Montana. And in Montana, you have to understand, in Montana was a mining country. And basically what was going on around the same time this Lochner decision was decided in 1905 was that all the big mining companies owned everything. And in fact, they owned the state legislature, they owned the Supreme Court, they owned everything. They bought and paid for it. And the citizens of Montana were so upset that they passed the new law and they said, you cannot make corporate donations to political campaigns in the state of Montana. This was back in the 1900s. And you know what? This Citizens United case was decided in 2010, and some big corporate front group said, well, we're going to bring a case in Montana. We're going to get them to overturn those old laws that existed in Montana because we want to be able to pay and buy for a new Supreme Court and a new Montana legislature. And you know, I got to give the Supreme Court of Montana a thumbs up, because they looked at that information and this is what they had to say in the case that they decided. They said corporations are not persons, and I'm quoting, human beings are persons. And it is an affront to the inviolable dignity of our species that courts have created a legal fiction that forces people, human beings, to share fundamental natural rights with soulless creatures of government. And that's why we want to overturn Citizens United. Because we want the best government that we can have that's for the people and by the people. And we don't want a government that is the best government money can buy. Okay? So what do we want?